what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.
What the hell is going on, everyone? Thank you all for being here. I hope you're all doing well in these crazy times. And today's stream, I think, is a really important one. And the reason why I say that is because these are crazy times and a lot of people are having a bit of a meltdown right now. And I think this situation and any situation really in life can always be improved by actually understanding it, right? Like when you're sitting in confusion and you're just kind of like desperate for answers, you don't know what the hell is going on. Like it can cause people to just spiral out of control. And, I'm not saying that's you guys, but I think, when you look around, especially normies who are like, what the hell is going on? People are spiraling a little bit. And what we're about to look at today offers a very clear explanation as to how we got here to a point where people who we would consider to be like demonic, cannibalistic, and just pure evil have become the ruling class. And this is only the first part of a documentary series, by the way. And this is a series that I've recommended probably more than anything for people to watch on this channel. It's probably been in the descriptions of more videos than anything else, but I've never actually watched it on the channel because ultimately, like it's confronting, right? Because I think it's real and it offers a very clear explanation that makes sense of how we got here. And I'm also a believer that like I haven't wanted to shove this in people's faces because it is confronting, right? And I think people need to find their own way to truth in their own time and at their own pace. Okay, I really do believe that. However, we've just been confronted with a lot of people have probably been blindsided with like the darker side of our reality of what is actually going on that some people have known for a long time, some people have been discovering, and some people have just had absolutely no idea about. But with what has just come out, that Band-Aid has just basically been ripped off for everybody. Okay, so I've just decided it's probably time that we watch this together because I think that there is comfort to be found in understanding the situation, like I said. And I think actually understanding it is going to be essential for us all because like with anything in life, you can never solve a problem if you don't understand it, right? So I think this is important because it's going to give you guys a clear idea of how we got here, what is actually going on. And hopefully, this information will be the building blocks for us to kind of find a way forward from here. And as Chuck says in this documentary, as Dr. Hillman said in our podcast together, knowledge is the antidote. Okay. And I truly believe that. And that is what we're going to be doing today. So this documentary was released in 2023 on YouTube by Chuck Swindoll Jr. It is linked below. So if you do enjoy this, please go give him his chocolates, chuck a like on the original, and even go and support him as well if you do like this. And there is, if you want to, and I hope you do, there is a part 2 and 3 that we can follow this up with. But we're going to be going into part 1 today. And another reason why I think this is also interesting and it might resonate with some people is you might actually recognize that name, Chuck Swindoll Jr., because he is the son of Chuck Swindoll, right? And this person, Chuck Swindoll, was like a very well-known evangelical Christian pastor. Okay, so he was an author, educator, radio preacher, basically a super well-known Christian man. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is this is obviously a very different worldview to what Chuck has, Chuck Jr. has, right? As you're about to see in this documentary. And the reason why I think that's important to show you is because you're not hearing this from the perspective of like some random guy who's just a schizophrenic in his basement who's come up with this. You're hearing this from someone who grew up in an evangelical household with parents who probably instilled a very specific belief system in him from an early age, and then went through his own dark night of the soul. He went through his own awakening process. He went through the realization, the shock, the panic, the despair that a lot of people are probably going through right now, having their entire ontology just flipped upside down, and then the awakening process that comes out of that. Okay, so I want you guys to know that, because this guy's already gone through what a lot of people are going through or about to go through right now. At least as a species, collectively, I think that's what's happening. And I actually think that that process, like the realization, the despair, the panic, and then the awakening that follows, I actually think that this is the process of disclosure. Okay. And I mean that in the sense of like when we would normally talk about disclosure, which is more like UFOs, aliens, right? Because, why has disclosure been kept secret for so long? And why have people said that the truth is too terrible to be told? Why have we learned that previous presidents have wept after learning the truth? And remember what Carl said, and what did he mean when he said that non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity for a long time? This is ongoing and it's not new. And he also said that the problem with disclosure is not learning the truth, but first it is unlearning what we think we know. Okay. And I think this is all connected. So we're about to let the unlearning process begin right now. I think you're going to get a dose of the true nature of reality. And just before we do, I'm going to catch up on these super chats and then we're going to dig straight into it. Christina, celebrating 9 months, says, "What up, weirdos? Love all you do, Josh, and all the freaks and weirdos. Keep cooking." Thank you very much, Christina, for the 9 months. Rambro's gifted a membership. Shout out to Rambro. Thank you, brother. Lots of love. John Kramer, you little freak. Jonah Kramer, I should say, you little freak. Thank you for becoming a member. Yvonne gifted a membership. Thank you very much, Yvonne. Andy with the big 12 months and the brand new orange badge, my man, Andy. Thank you for all the love over the last year. I very much appreciate it. Corrupt NPC gifted a membership too. Joshua gifted 5. Thank you very much, boys. You are legends. Limit Breaker celebrating 4 months says, "Been waiting all day for this one." Susie Sunshine celebrating 10 months says, "I'm 10 months old, almost ready for solid food. I feel so blessed to be a part of this amazing community. Thanks, Josh." Thank you, Susie, and for all of the support over the last 10 months. Appreciate you very much. Corrupt NPC celebrating 4 months says, "Might have to finish the stream later. Got to crash before work. Love all you weirdos." No problem, my man. Enjoy. And the Wrath of Can't Even says, "Remember to touch grass, weirdos. Love y'all." Thank you very much, guys. Now let's get some love in the chat to just put some good energy out there before we dig into this wild history of ours. And also, if I could invoke some of your healing energy, because I have rolled the absolute fuck out of my ankle and I can't walk at the moment. I'm hopping around like an idiot and my ankle is completely screwed. So send me a love in your healings and can we get big heals on the tank, please? Big heals. And let's get into this. Also, Jesus with 4 months says, "Are we back to normal now?" Maybe after this. Maybe after this. All right, here we go. This is Chuck Swindoll Jr. and teaching you all about the Khazarian Mafia. Here we go.
Hey, everybody. How are you doing? I'm glad that you're here. I know that I've been talking about this video for quite a while now, and I just now am getting my arms around it and the subject. And so it's taken me a while, longer than usual, to go from when I thought I was going to be releasing it to now, to actually releasing it. And so I say all that to say that it's been a real journey for me, and I think that anybody that takes on this subject, which is who actually runs the world, who actually rules the world, anyone who takes on this subject will find that it is not something that is quickly gathered. And I've really found that as I've dug into this, it seems like almost every day another layer is revealed. And that's also been a reason for the delay, is that I keep uncovering more and more about this group, because this group goes so far back. So what I've decided to do is I've decided to cut the video in half. So this first video, we're going to be covering from the origin, or our known origin, of human beings all the way till about 100 AD, which was the beginning of the formal Khazarian Mafia, between the Caspian and that would be the Black Sea, just north of the Caucasus Mountains. And 100 AD really marks the beginning of their infiltration formally and organized into the West, into the organized West, and into what became of the groups that ended up ruling the world.
I just want to say as well, Khazaria, where this group originates from, that region is now today almost like directly where the Ukraine-Russia war is being fought, which is really interesting because Russia were like heavily involved with the attempted interception of the original Khazarian Mafia. And now where that war is being fought is like right in that territory. I don't know if it's directly or indirectly connected or not at all, but you know, maybe it's just coincidence number 9,770,000.
And so since that is a story in and of itself from about 180, we're going to be covering the first part because to be honest, I haven't found any narratives that cover the origin of human beings and how this group came about through the bloodlines of human beings. I haven't found any essays. I haven't found anything that really digs into it. And the essay that I'm going to be using, which here, let me get the name of the gentleman who wrote it. Preston James and Mike Harris wrote an essay that's going to be carrying us from 100 AD to present day. But I haven't found any essays that cover from the origin of human beings until 100 AD that really do this group justice. And since this is our history, since this is the human history and origin, it matters. And so if you're looking for a 5-minute quick and dirty, I am not your guy. This is going to take probably, I would say, about an hour and a half, 2 hours to get through this first part. And then the essay is probably going to be that again. And
yeah, so this first part is not even the essay that he's referencing. So it's kind of like a preamble to that, like an hour-long preamble. And then, like I said, if you guys enjoy it, we can cover the essay probably across 2 parts. Mickey with $30. Thank you very much, Mickey, you sweetheart. She says, happy Polaritine's Day. There you go. And that actually reminds me, guys, you have 1 day left to use the code PolarityLove in the merch store, link below, to get 20% off to spoil your little weirdo or your little freak with some Polarity merch. Thank you very much, Mickey. I appreciate you very much.
And that's really going to be the only way, I feel, to communicate, to effectively communicate our history and why the world is the way that it is. And I think that's an awesome introduction into the titling of this, which is Why is the World the Way That It Is? I've named this essay Khazarian Mafia, The God Eaters, by Charles Regan Swindoll. And I'm starting with this nice quote from Aristotle. Nice doesn't do this quote justice. This awesome quote from Aristotle: knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And that really is true. That's why Alan Watts spent his entire career asking the question, who are you? And that's why the Buddha spent his entire life pursuing the question of absolving suffering. And the way one absolves suffering is knowing who you are, knowing the divinity that you are, knowing the divinity that you reflect and come from and emanate. And the journey to that space is extremely varied. And so that at the end of the day, what matters is knowing who you are and finding that out. Because no one can tell you. I can't tell you. Your pastor can't tell you. Your government official can't tell you. No book, no movie, no lecture is going to be able to tell you who you are. This is going to be a journey of self-discovery. That's how you find out who you are. And typically it comes through pain. I had an interesting dialogue with a friend on the internet, and she asked the question, is there any way to wisdom that doesn't involve pain? And I really sat and thought about it for a while, and I realized the stuff in my life that matters most cost me the most. There's a great Buddhist quote or Eastern quote that says, to know anything, I must lose everything. And that's been my experience. And I found that the more that I have lost, the more that I have just set aside as not the answer, but just a part of the answer, the more I've been able to open my mind to a larger reality, a larger truth that is hearkening all of us, especially right now during the Great Awakening.
Yep, ain't that the truth? I know for myself, you know, every kind of moment in life where I felt like I became to know myself on a deeper level, it all stemmed from hard times, painful times, because those painful times forced you to look inward. And it's interesting, right? Because you think of, you know, the rich, the royal, the elite. You can't imagine they're having as many hard times. You know, I'm sure they would all. And by the way, rich, royal, and elite, I'm sure there's a lot of people with a lot of money who aren't bad people. But generally, when you are there, you know, you're still going to experience death in your family, all these kind of things. But I feel like life is a lot easier, which means you may not come across as many moments or parts in your life that forces you to go inward and find that that point of self-discovery. So it's ironic that it seems like these people are the ones that are the perpetrators of inflicting that on other people. So we hear in the Epstein files. Prison Mike celebrating 1 month says 1 month today. I wish I subscribed earlier. Love the weirdo community. Thanks for what you do, Josh. Prison Mike, my pleasure, brother. Thank you for being here.
And so I wanted to start this off with a good question, which is, who are you? And this essay is hopefully going to help you understand who you are. Okay, so getting right into it, what we're going to be talking about today is the Khazarian Mafia.
Yeah,
and it's of my opinion that this group, as well as constellating groups around and about the Khazarian Mafia, are who have ruled the world since our inception. And I think that the human being, the human genome, is a multifaceted endeavor when you're attempting to understand our history, when you're attempting to know where and what and how we came about. And so it is quite a journey, because that true essence of us has really been hidden from us. And this group, the Khazarian Mafia, has worked very hard for us to not know who we are, because if we find out as a society, as the human collective, if we find out who we are, we will be unrulable, and we will think for ourselves, and we will develop for ourselves, and we won't be held back and shackled down by evil groups. And so the work of the Khazarian Mafia has been to suppress the knowledge of human beings, the history of human beings, the essence of human beings. And that really is what we're pursuing today, is our essence. And our history contains it, but they haven't want us to know it, because we become extremely powerful and an unstoppable force when we know who we are. Okay, so to begin, before we dive into the history of human beings, let's look very quickly at who, in my opinion, are the Khazarian Mafia. So I've developed this little slide here that shows a hierarchy. And at the top of the slide, what you're going to see is the top of the pyramid, the top of the hierarchy, and at the bottom of this slide is the bottom of the pyramid.
By the way, you know how I normally, before a stream, I put like, I put a pinned comment that says put a like on the video. I tried so many times to write 1 like equal 1 Baal burned, or 1 like equal 1 Moloch burned. And it was like, it wouldn't let me. It was just censoring my comment on my own channel. I was being censored on my own channel. It wouldn't let me write Baal or Moloch. So there you go. Apparently you can't talk about Baal or Moloch here on YouTube. So this is probably getting demonetized.
And what this shows, what I'm hoping to do here, is to begin to open your eyes to a larger reality than the one that has been taught to you by about level 2 here, the entertainers, and 3, the low-level government officials and so forth. Those are the quote-unquote emissaries, the representatives of this evil group, but they present the world, this evil group, in such a way that you would never know that there are many layers below them or above them. So let's look at this. At the top, we have what in Gnosticism is called the demiurge, Satan, Lucifer, Baal, Molech. These are anthropomorphisms of the evil that undergirds all of these groups. So at the very top of the pyramid is the ruler, overseer, the penultimate example of evil, which would be Satan. And so just below that are the fallen angels, watchers, archons, reptoids. It depends sort of what level you're at as far as what you know and understand about the world. But fallen angels, watchers, this comes out of the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch lays out the world in that there was a developing and thriving community history of human beings that was going on.
Interesting that through this, like I said, I think this is connected all to disclosure. And interesting that people in the government around these UAP hearings and stuff have started to mention and hint that people should read the Book of Enoch.
And then there was a moment when that history, that ongoing saga, was infiltrated by an outside group. And these it just depends on where you come from on this planet to determine what the name of this group is. But the common names are the fallen angels, the watchers, the archons, and the reptoids. And the theory is that the watchers involved themselves with humans, human women, bred with them, and the children that came out of those copulations were the Nephilim, the giants. And that's the next level down. Black nobility, Black Pope, Order of the Black Snake, Zoroastrian, and Nephilim bloodlines. Again, these are all hidden. These are not individuals, entities, groups that you would ever know about and you were to never know about. And these are what are behind the next level here, which is the Khazarian Mafia. And the Khazarian Mafia, really, there's a line that's drawn between those top three and the rest of the groups. And that is, this is when you begin to fall into categories of people that you know of, that you might have seen once or twice. The Jesuit Order, Babylonian, Canaanite bloodlines. This fills this next level, the Freemasons, Illuminati, Committee of 300, Club of Rome, Scottish Rite, CIA. The bloodlines of those group are inside the Khazarian Mafia, Jesuit Order, Babylonian, Canaanite bloodlines. I know this is a mouthful, but our history is very involved. So
history is very involved, and I think that's something that people need to realize as well. Like, think about how much things have changed, power structures have swung, developed, their reach has expanded in the last 10, 20, 30, 50 years, 100 years. This goes back way longer than that. Way longer than that. And I think it comes back to this analogy that I've used many times, in that we are in some kind of like Hunger Games society, where we think our district like is all like everything that we can see, like the CEOs at the top of the tech companies and the homeless people on the street. We think that that is like the top and the bottom of the entire world. But I think that there are districts on the other sides of both of them. Underneath would be like the uncontacted tribes that still exist. Some are contacted, some aren't, but they are totally disconnected from our world in the Amazon or wherever. I think there is like an equal counterpart to that on the other side, that are uncontacted from our world, but they are the Khazarian Mafia. They are the elite.
This then would lead to the low-level government officials, judges, FBI, WHO, and DEA, supposedly the people that you vote into office, which we all know that you don't. But supposedly, these would be the common everyday people that you're seeing all the time. So you can see, by looking at this order, these groups, you could see we move from a totally invisible order to a fully visible order, and it shifts within these groups here in the middle. What's also interesting, Club of Rome, Scottish Rite, these groups require pedophilia to enter. What you're going to notice, the common thread that comes out of these ancient orders of people, groups of people, is child sacrifice, blood sacrifice. And to be a part of these groups, you must be a person who involves yourself at that level.
Sorry to keep pausing it, but I just want to touch on that because you guys remember the video that I did covering the leaked footage of the Freemason ritual. And at the end of that video, I showed you guys the message conversation that I had with the guy who watches my channel. Don't know if he still does, but he used to. And he sent me proof of him graduating through the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry up to the 33rd degree. And, you know, he told me that what he saw going into that level basically turned him away from ever wanting to be a part of it again. And that it was, he never went into specifics and he never actually got back to me. But he said, because he said he wasn't sure how comfortable he felt to be able to share it, but he absolutely was implying all of the things that are coming out through the Epstein files. That's exactly the kind of things he was implying.
And so the Scottish Rite and Club of Rome, these groups, it's required that you engage in some kind of CP, in order to enter the group.
CP, cheese pizza, by the way.
And then you have the bottom three, low-level government officials, judges, FBI, WHO, DEA, entertainers, media, sports figures, public officials. These would not be the bloodlines. These would not be the true origins. These would be people that have sold their soul. They have sold their life and soul to Molech. And they have given over all their humanity, all their compassion over to evil. And so they are in service. They are in service to evil. And you are not to know that. Us at the bottom there, the feeders, the breeders, commodities, and assets, that's us. The world, the earth, in my opinion, is a farm. And we are the assets, the commodities that come out of the way the earth is put together, the way that it's run right now. Obviously, this is a blasphemous version of the original earth. It wasn't like this at one time. But it has been, the earth, us as a society, have been infiltrated by a parasite. And that parasite is pure evil.
We have been infiltrated by a parasite. And I've used that term before. I think I probably got it from listening to Max Spears, controversial whistleblower, you know, secret space program-esque guy. But he spoke about this. You know, I think Max Spears is a fascinating guy, and I would love to go back and listen to more of him because he spoke about this, about the war for the mind, the war for your heart, and that there is a parasitic evil on Earth that is kind of capturing and weaving, a spell, for lack of a better word, over humanity. He said some really, really interesting things.
And so in order to overcome this, in order to overcome these groups and to change the world, we must save ourselves. And the way we save ourselves is through knowledge, is through learning and understanding not only who we are, but the world round about. And in order to do that, you're going to have to remove the assumptions that you have. And when you see a list like this, you're going to have to begin to see the world in a larger scope than the assumed constriction that has been inculcated into you. And that's inculcated into you through entertainers, media, sports figures, public officials, your education, your science, your medicine, your religion. These are all ways, disciplines, used to constrict your world and to make your focus much smaller, to only see the world through a pair of binoculars rather than seeing the world naturally through your own eyes. And so when you see the world confined like this, you're only seeing so much of the world. And really, science, medicine, politics, religion, government, these things, even our agriculture, these things are what deplete and sicken us as individuals and as a society, because they are false realities.
False reality. Matthew Brown basically echoed that sentiment. The Matrix, David Icke, so many of the people who have been ridiculed over time have been telling us this. And like Carnell said, the problem is not disclosing you the truth, because first you have to unlearn what you think that you know.
And so my words here and what I'm showing you here is very revulsive to folks that are really caught up. But it's the only way we're going to grow. It's the only way we're going to learn, is to find out that the history we've been taught, the medicine we've been taught, the life we have been taught is false. And it's because it comes out of this order, as I've showed you, these groups here.
Rip the Band-Aid off. It's time, people. Rip it off.
A quick look at the costumes these groups wear is the, let's see, let me find it here.
There it is.
Yes, is this slide here, the Cult of Baal image drawn by Dylan Monroe. And this shows you, looking at the top here, this shows you the costumes that these groups have worn so that you would never see the actuality below the costume. And so they've hidden themselves inside of the kings, inside the royalty, inside the ruling groups and empires that have controlled and steered humanity. And this evil has cloaked itself in many different forms, such as the Roman Empire, the Roman Catholic Church, the Jesuit Order, Pharaonic Egypt. These would be the costumes that the evil has adorned so that you would never know that you're being ruled by evil. And when you look at a map like this, where it shows how they've simply changed their costume within the theater that is the human collective, you'll see how they have mastered the human race and controlled it and held it to account in a very, very small world that does not reflect actual nature, actual reality. They've put us into a conflict-oriented world is what they've done, and I've spent many videos talking about that. And one of the ways that you shorten the life and constrict the mind of a human being is by filling them with lies and filling them with poisons, filling them not only with food poisons, but religious poisons and governmental poisons and historical poisons. And you do that enough to any human being, any human collective, you will permanently disable them. Permanently in the sense that as long as they are within and absorbed by those poisons and taken by those poisons, they will not get out. Okay, so from that basic general look at the actual world, let's go to the beginning here on the first slide where I talk about where this essay came from, and yeah, let's get started. This essay is an offspring of the Cliff High Substack write-up called Walk Without Rhythm, found here. And if you'd like, please feel free to copy that address down, put that in your computer, and check it out. I'm going to also present his essay here. As you know, I agree with some of what Cliff High says, and I disagree with some of what Cliff High says. That's called a healthy relationship.
You hear that? Can we get that on a t-shirt? He disagrees with some of what he says, and he agrees with some of what he says, and that is a healthy relationship. Yep, it's okay to disagree.
Cliff retweeted my Luciferian video as legit info years ago, so I can't dismiss the guy completely. His human manipulation theory has legit clout, and it ties in well to our discussion today. Now, before I continue any further, I know that this evil group has done a very good job of tribing out humanity. Tribing out meaning coercing different groups of people into set beliefs And the beliefs that these different groups subscribe to are incongruent with each other. So these tribes of people don't intermingle very well because they have been tribed out in their beliefs. Here's a great example. There's a whole host of people who believe in flat Earth, and there's a whole host of people who believe in a spherical Earth. And both of these tribes of people are 100% convicted with the idea that they're right, that they have enough information to show and prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that they are absolutely correct. And so anyone who doesn't subscribe to their belief is an idiot, should be ostracized, should be marginalized, should be an outcast, should never be listened to. And see, this is how you take a group of people and you isolate and alienate them.
And that is the world today. And that is, but the thing is, it's as simple as us realizing this and then collectively being like, okay, we've been a little bit retarded lately. Let's just wind it back a little bit and remember that we're actually all humans and that a little bit of kindness goes the longest way. The longest way. Prison Mike gifted a membership. Prison Mike, my brother, thank you very much, man. Appreciate you as always.
Because they will not hear any words but the words that they have subscribed to. They're living in an echo chamber. It doesn't dumb you down to become familiar with both the arguments of the flat Earth folks and the arguments of the spherical Earth folks, because they both have convincing arguments. And so it's a good idea to learn those arguments. It doesn't matter if they're right or wrong. The point being, it's a good idea to learn them. Just like if you're going to go and study many cultures of people, it doesn't mean you're going to take on their traditions. It doesn't mean that you're going to take on their gods and their ideas of life, but you're going to be exposed to their traditions, to their gods, to their ontologies, which will expand your mind. That's called a well-rounded education. You are not just learning the stuff you're going to fully buy into, but you're also learning the stuff that you would never buy into, because that makes you a smarter person. It makes you a wiser, more refined individual, because you have not spent your life rejecting everything that you just don't see, that you don't
AKA get out of your echo chamber.
Agree with, which makes you enslaved to your own mind. And that's really what this group has effectively done, is enslave us to doctrines that are false. Doctrines about ourselves and doctrines about the world, whether that be a medical doctrine, a religious doctrine, a scientific doctrine, whatever the case may be. These groups have worked extremely hard to hold us in contempt to the doctrines that they have foisted upon us. Okay, so the way we're going to break out of that is we're going to expose ourselves, that's the whole point of what I'm doing here, expose ourselves to a different reality and therefore a larger reality. And that's exactly what Cliff High's Walk Without Rhythm essay
Get him,
does.
Chuck.
So I'm going to post this essay. Here it is. It reads from left to right. And if you want, you can just simply pause the video at each one of these slides, and you can take the time for yourself to read it. And what this is going to do is this is going to help you see the world from a different perspective than the one that you grew up in, than the one that was indoctrinated into you. And that's a good idea, because then you can relate to others who maybe have subscribed to this, and you don't ostracize and alienate yourself from everybody who knows these or believes these ideas that Cliff is expressing here to be true. What I would like to say, as we finish up this last slide, what I would like to say is, the theory that Cliff holds, and I'm going to talk about this here next, the theory that Cliff holds really substantiates and brings understanding to some of the major questions we have as a human culture, whether it be a religious or scientific consideration. Meaning, the theory that Cliff has answers to why we have a fused chromosome, to why we are structurally unfit for the gravitational pull of this planet. And it...
Sorry to cut him off, but just for anyone who doesn't know, Cliff High, who he's referencing here in that article, is the same guy who did the 39 days to melee prediction, which was when, way back in like 2009, he predicted... I can't remember exactly what it was, but basically it was like when Joe Rogan is interviewed by, when Donald Trump is interviewed by Joe Rogan. I don't know if both of their names were used specifically, but I think it was definitely Donald Trump was named. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, the prediction was 39 days after that happens, which back in 2009 was like a very strange thing to say, those two people. 39 days later, we would see like things in the sky, a battle in the sky. They both were mentioned. Okay, there you go. So literally, they were both named. When Donald Trump is interviewed by Joe Rogan, 39 days later, we'll begin to see things in the sky. 39 days after Donald Trump went on Joe Rogan and had like the biggest podcast ever, I think. Basically led straight into when all of the New Jersey drones really started kicking off. What a coincidence. Winston, thank you very much for the membership. Let's get some love in the chat, guys. Let's keep going.
Accounts and resolves this intermediary type of situation that we're living in, meaning that we have this layer of people, of institutions and groups of people who have been ruling over the planet for a very long time and holding us as a human society in developmental contempt. And so his accounting of our history really welcomes and integrates and coalesces well with this philosophy that really watchers did come down, that really there was an intermingling and genetic shift and change of human beings, that the planet really was bombarded with all types of natural disaster that completely shifted not only the atmosphere of the planet, but the history of those that inhabited the planet. And so we're going to talk about all of those issues today as we begin to search out and find out not only our history, but these groups of people, these families that have been ruling over us. I do believe we are edging closer to our real origin story, and Substack essays like those from Cliff High cause me to think it's closer than we realize. Like the universe, we are an organism in development, and our complexifying history is simply the path we have taken to become aware of ourselves. We chose a more difficult path than the universal average due to the compromised condition foisted upon us by horrific outside forces. Nothing that cannot be outdone, but the undoing will be costly. No pain, no gain. And again, this reflects what I said earlier. Everything that you learn in life that really matters, that has an influence, that really changes you as an individual, is costly. It requires a painful endeavor, enduring and working through and coming out the other side of some type of painful event, and typically many, many painful events. And often, the more painful events you endure and survive, the richer of an individual you become, the richer your character, the richer your perseverance, the richer and more deeply you see yourself and the world. And this is because nature doesn't hand itself to you. The true aspects and true measures of nature come through extremely difficult paths because they're hard to integrate. Because nature is so enormous, so overwhelmingly huge, that to begin to grasp just what we are, what you are as an individual, and the world that we live in, it takes everything that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. He's cooking on that one. And but I would also say that when you go through those times, when you have that self-discovery through that pain, that overwhelming feeling, that's a choice, right? Like, and this is where victim mentality comes in, because there are people in life who don't do that, and it's just woe is me. I'm the victim. It's everyone else's fault. And I feel like those are the people who are like spiritually stagnant. And I think most people, once they realize that you can like grow through pain, then you continue to do so. But people who stay in a victim mentality, some people stay in it their entire life. Some people grow old. I know some people who are senior citizens who behave like children, like mentally, the way that they see life, the way they handle things. It's like, you need to go do some work. You know what I'm saying? So I think like this is like an understanding that is not tied to like maturity. Like I think spiritual maturity is completely separate to like your age. It's something that you have to do. It's like a journey that you go on yourself. And I did see a couple of comments of people saying he sounds AI and something about his voice. I wasn't going to say it unless anyone noticed it, but he is sped up by 10%. And I purely did that just because of the length. But if it really bothers anyone, when we go through the next parts, I can put it on the normal time.
And that's why you must empty yourself. You go through the process of what in the West is called kenosis, which is to self-empty. And by emptying of yourself, you no longer are self-consumed. One of the real tragedies of locking into one belief system is you become naturally self-consumed, because the only belief system that you'll subscribe to is the one that has consumed you. And so you live a life of self-consumption because you can't learn anything else. Your mind is already full. And so that's why that Eastern philosophy, which is to know anything, I must lose everything, that's just the Western way of kenosis, of what is called kenosis. It was called calcination in Gnosticism and alchemy. And this was the burning away of the assumptions of one's mind, the burning away of what you know as fact. And by burning away those aspects of your mind, you then actually can learn something. You then actually can learn something past what you have assumed to know.
A lot of people in the chat saying I'm old and I'm still a child. No, that's not quite what I meant. Look, I'm 34 and I still I still love dick and fart jokes. I still like to play video games. So like that's not what I mean. I mean, like, how do you interact with other humans? Like, how do you handle situations, right? How do you handle adversity? I think that is spiritual maturity, and I don't think that's tied to any age. You'll see people younger than me in their early 20s that are spiritually mature, right? So I think that they're different. Babs says, Josh, would you consider interviewing Ali Carter? Yeah, absolutely. I know her story, not super well, but I know who she is. I know what she talks about. I haven't seen much from her in a long time, but that would be a fascinating interview. And Winston gifted a membership as well. Thank you very much, Winston.
70% of the population lives in a consensus state, which is basically a herd mentality. So these are the literal NPCs of the world. So they don't form independent thought. When they want to know what their opinions are on certain topics, they just look to the external world. So these kinds of people will tend to get the most offended when you present them certain views that go outside of their paradigm, because their beliefs actually represent unconscious security needs. So they unconsciously gain security in trusting the mainstream media, celebrities, the experts, the government. They basically can't really think for themselves, so they seek security in outsourcing their opinions to the outer world. And moving from this consensus herd mentality to the next stage, which is an individuated state, is actually often a traumatic process, because instead of trusting the external world like you always have, the government, the authorities, you actually have to learn how to trust self as an inner guidance system instead. And in order to do that, you actually have to decondition and undo a lot of what you thought was true about yourself and the world in the process. So this is a really alienating and lonely process by design, because in order to discover who you are, you actually have to separate from the herd to begin with.
Please. Thank you. Please and thank you.
And the thing is, you can't actually force people out of this state. It has to come from an inner calling. So it has to come from them realizing that there is something different inside of them that can't be explained by the experts, science, celebrities, government. And in my view, it really takes a certain ripeness of the soul to even want to go down that path, because it's not easy. Most people will actually refuse the call of their individuation again and again and again, because their unconscious security needs to stay in the unknown, the known rather, of the consensus is so strong. So you don't want to hate them for that. It's actually a necessary stage in their own soul's development. And this is why trying to wake up family, friends, and others in general is almost always a failed project.
Don't do it.
And really,
Don't do it.
how I feel about it, the best thing you can do in these times is focus on your own soul evolution and find something unique about you that you can bring back to the world. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it is the most highly individuated and spiritualized people who actually create the next consensus. And they don't do this by forcefully trying to wake up the people who are asleep. They do this by bringing back their true essence, their true nature, and their soul gifts back to the consensus, where they can uplift, inspire, and show people there's a different way to be.
And what she said there is exactly what I said at the start of this show, is that is the reason why I've never played this. I've watched this many times, and I've always thought it's just resonated. It's an amazing documentary, but it's like ripping someone's what they think is real away from them and showing them what it is. And I don't think that's something that should be done to people who aren't prepared. But the reason why we're watching it now is because I think these Epstein files have kind of already done that. And this actually gives you guys some answers. Burley Bob says, never joined any herd. My man, that's it. The lone wolf. Love to hear it.
Cliff has a pretty far out theory about the origin of humans, which I won't detail, but it involves aliens from a distant galaxy seeding Earth with adult breeding pairs of humans long before written history, some 200,000 to 300,000 years ago. Those were the first untainted versions of humans. We were left to develop on our own in the garden that is the Earth. This begins to open up questions about Earth's history. And in order to know Earth's history, you're going to have to open up to ideas that are maybe outside the normal bounds that you've accepted. As part of our origin scenario, Cliff suggests the idea of an evil alien species called the Elohim, who came or fell here and manipulated our DNA through interbreeding and genetic manipulation. Enoch called them the Watchers. Now, one thing to mention here, and this is key, they came or fell here and manipulated our DNA through interbreeding and genetic manipulation. Now remember, this would have been then, according to this theory, this would have been the second intervention by an alien force. The first one being our original creation, and I'm following this narrative. The first one being our original creation, and then there being a fall that changed our genetics, and then there's a second quote-unquote creation that happens after the cataclysm, after this massive shift that happened to us and to the planet. And so this narrative really follows well even the scriptural idea that there was an original creation of human beings and then a second creation of human beings. So this common thread you're beginning to see and pattern you see in our history is that there was an original form of human beings that was directly from the work of an alien species. And then there was a parasite that came in and manipulated us at the genetic level, shortened our lives, lowered our brain capacity, and psychologically devalued us as individuals, meaning our mind, constricted our minds. And this points to the Elohim are essentially a demonoid species from another dimension who have defiled nature God by manipulating our DNA. And see, this points to what I like to call, and what I'll get into here, this points to what I like to call the original sin. And this was the original, in my argument, this was the original blasphemy of nature against God. The Elohim demons came here long ago to manipulate our DNA and enslave us by compromising our practical awareness, our mind, while keeping our God awareness coding, our spiritual sense, intact. DNA carries the coding to develop the material biology that allows for a sense of a larger reality than the material landscape. Altering our DNA disempowered our development while not compromising our etheric sensitivity, creative force. They dumbed us down. They lowered the capacity of our brain down to, just 5-6%. They shortened our life. We were living probably about 1,000 years. So how much wisdom can you acquire in, say, 80, 90 years in comparison to how much you could acquire in, say, 900 to 1,200 years? You see, you'd be so incredibly wise by the end of your life, no one would be able to con or convince you of anything that's false, because you will have enough wisdom from the road to know the shit from Shinoa. And so that etheric sensitivity is the key to all that. And so even though we were dumbed down biologically, we spiritually remain sensitive. And that is by design. That is, they purposefully did that because these creatures eat God. And the reason why they prey upon us is to get access to this love and compassion energy that they cannot access. We are the intermediaries, meaning we allow them access to a form of God they cannot access on their own. And that is why we were farmed. That is why the children are tortured. The innocence is stolen from children, and all of this whole idea of downgrading the human being. This is so that they can continue to consume that innocence. We give them access to God because as pure evil, they cannot access love. And so they access that love through the consumption of children, through the consumption of the blood that is love that flows through us. You see?
And I just want to, I think I mentioned this the other day, but again, this goes back to Native American mythology about the Wendigo and people that would consume other human beings. It creates an infinitely unsatiated hunger for more, and it kind of removes their humanity. It taints their soul, and it basically makes them something less than human, like a monster, or what they would call the Wendigo. And I'm sure there are many other native tribes around the world, not from the American continent, that would tell you a similar story through their own lens. It's Alan Allegory. Thank you very much for the super chat. Didn't leave a message, but I appreciate you all the same. And John Anthony says Matthew Brown indicated that there's a small window of opportunity to expose and overcome this false reality. Thank you, Josh, for your leadership helping to enlighten your fellow Weirdonians. Perhaps together we can all open that window fully. I hope so. It's my pleasure. It really is my pleasure. I mean, I'm just doing what I think is the right thing to do. And the fact that people are here with me, coming along for the ride, tells me I must be doing at least something half right. So, John, thank you very much for the big super chat, my man. I appreciate your support as always. And Winston says everyone needs more Snoopy in their life. There you go. Thank you, Winston.
The Elohim were actually the ones who committed the original sin, and I mentioned this earlier. They committed the original sin. They blasphemed nature by altering our DNA. They altered the image of God by manipulating the DNA of an authentic being in development. This is a defilement of nature, God, the universe. Your DNA is your biological image of nature, God. And to manipulate this is to manipulate the work of the creative force.
DNA is just an abbreviation for a much longer name, deoxyribonucleic acid. That's what DNA stands for. Now, deoxy, see, that's a Latin root. If you trace its meaning, it means God. So deoxyribo. In the Semitic languages, ribo is the same as rabbi. Or in Arabic, we say rab. It means the master, the Lord.
Oh, God.
So here we have deoxyribo, God, Lord, and master, nucleic acid. Nucleic means at the center, and acid is like chemical fire. So deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. What does it mean? God, Lord and master, the fire at the center of my being.
Nature is the creative force or God manifesting, incarnating, transmogrifying into material matter. To coerce the creative force genetically is to blaspheme the work of God. If I'm an abuser and I want to hold my victim in contempt and I want them to remain my victim, I blame them for the abuses that I put upon them. So I tell them it's their fault if I'm the abuser. I tell the victim, my victim, I tell them that it's their fault that they're being punished because they did something bad. And so they deserve the punishment that they're getting. And eventually the victim will believe it. They'll believe that they deserve to be abused. And in this same way, this is what's happened. We have been blamed for falling, separating from God, whereas they were the ones who did the original manipulation. And so they, meaning the Elohim, are projecting their crime, their sin, their evil upon us, just like an abuser projects their own evil upon their victim.
When you understand this one thing, you will understand everything about this reality that we live in called the Matrix, including our governments and the way society functions. And this one thing is summed up in 2 words: victim consciousness. The government and all of the ruling elite need you to believe that you are a victim. Now, you can deep dive down the rabbit hole of your consciousness and contemplation and philosophy and all of the other things and begin to understand this is at the core of all religions and all governments. It's why they removed God from us and made God separate to us, something outside of you, something outside of me. Because if it was outside of us, they could then control how we access it. And if they can control how they access it, aka God, aka through priests, through religions, through the Bibles. Back in the day, you had to speak Latin to be able to even read the Bible, right? It couldn't be printed in English because they were gatekeeping access to God. Why? Because when you understand that you can access God in one place and only one place, and that is within you, through your own heart, through your own portal in here, through your own consciousness, through your own connection, and you begin to understand that there is no separation between you and God, you begin to understand that you are divine. When you begin to understand that you are divine, you begin to understand that you are not a victim, that nobody can control you, that your rights that constitutions give you are fucking unalienable. They are God-given. They are divine. They are because you are. Their whole system of class, of hierarchy, is based on one thing. It's based on you believing and seeing yourself as a victim that needs someone to govern you. You need someone to save you. You need someone to figure it out for you. You need someone to whatever, right? This is the whole fucking welfare state, you guys. If you start to pick at this thread, you will begin to unravel the entire fabric of this quote unquote reality that we live in.
What she's saying there is something that I've said on this channel as well, that religion in its modern sense is for the most part just a control structure because it removes the power from you. It puts you in this mindset of you are kind of helpless and you are praying and waiting and hoping that something external is going to come here to save you. That's not going to ever happen. If we all collectively took responsibility and begin to realize that we need to save ourselves and we need to take action and that we have the power to do that, collectively, that's going to literally change the world, I believe. And I think that's what religion is. And I think when I've spoken about this before, I've noticed comments of people saying like you're like that's satanic, that's demonic. You're literally saying that you think you're God. That's like the antithesis to what like the Bible is about. That's not what I'm saying. That's not actually what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we all have it within us to form a connection. We don't need anything external. There's nothing external. It is within us to create that connection. But it generally comes from the things that we've looked at before, is doing that like inner work, looking inwards. That's what I believe it is about.
You see, it's a deception. And so all of Western religion was built on this idea. It was built on this idea that you're guilty at birth. It was built on this idea that simply because you're born from people that thought for themselves, you also are tainted. You see, and so this is how you carry this prostrated spirituality over thousands of years within the human society. You have people that could develop past this idea, but you hold that society in contempt by making them think that they're guilty, by making them think that they're the reason why they're separated.
You hold a society in contempt by making them think that they're guilty. Look, I mean, as a white Australian, I can't comment about other countries, but if you live in Australia and you're white, aren't you just a piece of shit, right? Aren't you just a piece of shit? Because how dare you be white in Australia, right? I mean, it's racist to even wave an Australian flag on Australia Day. Okay, now I know that there's complexities around that, and I'm an advocate for unity. Okay, I don't want to go on a rant about Australian and Aboriginal unity and division, but ultimately, I think it should be a day of working out a way that we can come together. And there's so much division and chaos and conflict sewn into it, when ultimately it could be a day about people coming together. And I think I can only really speak from that perspective, obviously, but I think each country has their own issues with colonization and indigenous people. And, it just reminds me of like, it's always focused on the past. Look at what you did. Look at what you did. Victim, victim, victim. It's like, oh, mate, we are hundreds and hundreds of years down the track now. Agree, bad things happened. Agree. I didn't do it. We didn't do it. How about we look forward instead of back and work out a way how we can come together? And why don't we make it a day about solidarity and moving forward? But they don't do that. They put the focus on division. They put the focus on contempt and being a victim. And by its very nature, it keeps us divided. And that is by design.
From God. Whereas the truth of the matter is there is no such thing as separation. And even though we were genetically modified, there's still no separation from the creative force, from God, because we have love and compassion within us. Okay, so this is one of the ways psychologically we have been preyed upon by this group. How do you do that genetically? Well, Cliff High has an idea. Next slide. It was a simple fix. They burned out the second chromosome and fused the junction where it used to be with the non-activating codon. Thus, the order of processing of the gene sequence was changed, with third chromosome becoming number 2. The totality of chromosomes was reduced from 24 to 23. Look up here on the top right. Human chromosome 2 was formed by the head-to-head fusion of 2 ancestral chromosomes that remain separated in other primates, meaning it's not natural. This was done, and it's not going to happen again because it was done in the lab. What this is basically saying in science and biology is, look here. There's been a fusion that has happened in our chromosomes. If we look at the next slide, at the end of your chromosomes are telomeres, okay? And these are like a sealing edge for the tube that holds your DNA. Inside that chromosome is your DNA, the map that is you, the map that creates you. And so at the end of the tube are caps, so that the DNA strands that are inside the tube don't fray, come out, and spill out and are destroyed, okay? And so are metabolized. And so what you see here genetically is you see 2 heads that have been fused together. Look here on the left. Human chromosome number 2. What do you see? You see 2 telomere heads that have been fused together. Folks, that's laboratory work. That's not natural work happening in nature. That's laboratory manipulation, genetic manipulation of our chromosome. That's what's happening there. You have something that has come in, my argument is that it's a species, has come in who are genetic geniuses, and they have bonded these 2 telomeres. And what this shows you is, first of all, this wouldn't have happened. This doesn't happen in evolution. Okay, so that brings a huge question then to the evolutionary theory. And then this, if you were a God creating a human being or a being, you would never leave this kind of signature in your work. It would be like Chip Foose. You know who Chip Foose is? Chip Foose is a dude that restores old cars, makes absolutely beautiful hot rods out of old cars. So let's say like you're Chip Foose, and you're restoring a 32 Ford. And so you've got awesome V8 engine in it. You paint it beautiful candy red, and it's just absolutely gorgeous, spotless over the whole thing. And then you leave a door dent with a little bit of rust on the driver's side door. That's what this telomere head-to-head fusion is like. It's like if Chip Foose restored a car, but left, as a mark on his signature, left a dent and rust on the driver's side door. Sure, the car's going to get A to B. Sure, it's going to be able to drive and go anywhere you need it to go. But would Chip Foose have ever left that ding and rust in the door if he's restoring the whole car from tires to the roof? Never.
It's a good explanation. It's a good analogy. I like it. I like it. We might be one big science experiment by something that is proficient in genetic gene manipulation, genetic splicing. And I don't know if you guys saw the recent Jesse Michaels. Actually, I think he just put out another one today. Actually, I haven't watched it yet. But the one before that, it was the guy at Vandenberg Air Force Base, and he said he had that being approach him, and he was sort of paralyzed in fear. Next minute, he's on what he thinks is a craft, and basically the point is he is just one of many people who, in these encounter experiences, these beings are able to not only paralyze the body, they're able to invoke like feelings of either ecstasy, terror, that for somehow, despite the crazy situation, everything's going to be okay. Like, this feels like an intelligence that is literally able to manipulate every facet of our being, from like our emotion to what we see, to what we feel, to the way we experience time. And if that is true that we're dealing with something that has that ability, again, maybe that has something to do with why the truth is so terrible. And what Jim Semivan said recently on James Iandoli's podcast, where he said something like, the truth is indigestible because there's just nothing that we can do about it. Like, there's no point in telling people, because what's the point in telling people a dark side of reality when there's just nothing we can do about it? Hey, Hides. Thank you for the 12 months. Look at that badge. Beautiful. She says, love a good Josh rant. Thank you for 12 months of pure weird bliss, fam. Big loves. Thank you, Heidi, for all of your support, for your moderation skills. I can't honestly thank you guys enough. Those orange badges mean a lot to me. We'll catch up on a few super chats while we're here. Have a little breather. Go and get it. Fill your drink bottles up. Have a stretch. Limit Breaker says, really enjoying this one. Thanks, Josh. Best since Armin. Big Soul, celebrating 3 months, says, so pumped to catch a live. Love you, weirdos. Thank you very much. Stevie says, Josh is on the money with this stream. Grateful for Polarity to sit with the like-minded weirdos. Nope, we can't convince our family members or friends. No, you can't. And even like when my brothers and stuff ask me about this stuff, I'm kind of like, bro, like, do you really want to know? Like, if you're just kind of like a bit curious, yeah, so yeah, there's UFOs. Yeah, they're a bit spooky. Don't know what they are. I just kind of tell them that version. Go along your way. Enjoy your life. It's Alan Allegory says, William Donahue's decodes the Bible, shows similarities between Zoroastrian, Buddhism, Gnostics. Society will change. Good episode. It hasn't been defiled by any UFO or disclosure modern stuff. Okay. If you're in our Discord, hopefully you are, drop it in the media section. It does sound really interesting. I'd love to check it out. Thank you very much for the super chat. Hey, I'm going to play some games, says meditation works. That's why they pump billions into the entertainment industry, to keep everyone's attention focused on what they want to manifest. Interesting. That's definitely effective. We are definitely distracted, just like the Romans did. Nothing has changed. Mermaid Moxie says, united we stand, divided we fall. Thank you, Mermaid. I agree. The Goyim united will never be defeated. We need that on a t-shirt. Big Soul says, everybody love everybody, to quote Will Ferrell. But how much better would of the world be? Would the world be if we focused on love instead of what divisions we face? Couldn't agree more with you, bro. Even though I absolutely fell over on my way through it, I couldn't agree more with you. Thank you very much, Big Soul. Great message. Shigley, celebrating 6 months, says, hope all is good with you, Josh, and the Weirdo fam. Thank you, bro. Other than my ankle right now, I'm feeling great. Outcast, celebrating 4 months, says, you have to find Cliff High's old stuff. It will break your brain. Keep up the good work. Cheers. Thank you very much, Outcast. Shigley gifted a membership as well. Thank you very much, Shig. And Larissa, celebrating 6 months, says, Josh, you are absolutely right. It's not about this or that, but us. Come together. Thanks for all that you do. Thank you, Larissa, for the 6 months of support. And I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, we're about halfway through this, guys. Let's keep going.
He would never do that. And if you are a deity, a god, and you're creating a human being or a being, you would never, ever, ever do this. This is crude. This is crude biology. This is crude, forced biology. It's the signature of a psychopath. It's not the signature of a deity. So right there is evidence that something else is going on. There is a larger scheme at work that's being kept from you. So, and here's one of the great things about knowing who you are. By finding this out about yourself, you now know a perspective about yourself that you were unaware of before you started this video. And that's why it's valuable to you, because this is evidence you carry. You carry the evidence that you've been genetically manipulated. It is in your DNA. That is not the work of a divine God, and that is not the work of evolution. It's neither. Which points to an origin for us as human beings, which is different, very different than what you have become accustomed. This is one of the reasons why this changeover has taken so long. Because there are, and I'm not saying I'm right, I'm just saying there's a very real possibility of this, that if this is the case, how many people can handle that in society? How many people can roll with that reality and totally accept it? And a great example I give for that is, to be able to accept this situation is, doesn't really matter what your origin is. Does it really matter to your value? Are you less valuable because you find out this about your origin? Does that make you any less value? In the same way, if you have an orphan who doesn't know who their parents are, and you have a child who doesn't know who their parents are, is either child more valuable than the other? Simply because one doesn't know who their parents are and one does that change their value at all? No, it doesn't at all. So this doesn't change your value. That's one of the ways you can accept and swallow this science. This doesn't change your value. Because you carry consciousness within you. You're a miracle. The fact that you come from a genetic manipulation doesn't change the fact that you're a miracle. Doesn't change the fact that you are a conscious, eternal being having a material experience in time. You are a timeless being having an experience in time. Does it matter at all whatsoever that your history may contain some genetic manipulation? Does that devalue it all?
Nope.
So we genetically were modified. They took us, our perfect, probably multi-strand, like right now we have a double helix DNA. We have a 2-strand DNA that is held together in a crystalline structure with water and vibration. And the theory is that that used to be something like a 10-strand, 12-strand, 15-strand, maybe 30-strand DNA. This next slide. It was the original species of humans these extraterrestrial Elohim demonoids manipulated to form us as we are today, a short-lived, DNA compromised, brain decapacitated species. This explains our only using 5 to 8% of our brain's capacity, why 95% or more of our DNA is considered useless junk, why our second chromosome is fused. We are getting to the origins of why things are the way that they are, which lead to how and who made things the way that they are, you see? Is this the great secret that cannot be divulged to anyone for fear society would collapse? Is this the answer to why our planet has been turned into a human farm? Are the Elohim demons the parasitic species that has held human development in check for over 10,000 years? To wit, is the Khazarian Mafia the intermediating society used by the leader of the Elohim, Lucifer, to con and steer the world into eternal self-enslavement?
Does kind of seem that way. It does kind of seem that way, just kind of zooming out, doing a bit of a bird's eye view of things. It does kind of seem that way.
It's beginning to look like that's the case.
Yeah.
From what I have researched through the testimonies of satanic ritual abuse survivors, Jay Parker, Kathy O'Brien, banker Ronald Bernard, former satanic and Catholic priests Mark Passio and John Spong, autodidact Jordan Maxwell, survivors of intense CP, Kurth Barker and the Hampstead children, women who were child breeders for sacrifice, Teresa from the 60 Minutes interview, I can show you if you want, I have discovered the following. I've discovered these things from studying the testimonies and hearing the testimonies of these people. The Amalekite, Khazarian, Luciferian, Masonic groups have anthropomorphized the Elohim into Lucifer, whom they worship as God. In exchange for raping and murdering children during ritual sacrifices, devotees to evil are given wealth, power, long life, prestige, and public notoriety. We've been marginalized with abuse bonds, pacified with false religions, coerced with harmful medicine, mugged with pernicious usury, and distracted with red herrings. The science, medical, judicial, political, religious, sport, and financial worlds are all direct and unmistakable testimonies to what Khazarians call Babylonian money magic. It dates back to Babylon, Amalek, and the bloodlines of Esau and the Canaanites. And here we're going to begin to get into the bloodlines directly.
Babylonian money magic. Now, who would be doing magic with money, huh? Makes you wonder. Someone made an interesting comment here. JP says, JP, I think we've all felt something was off since we were young, and we all felt different. Now, this really interests me because I don't by any means think I'm special or an individual when it comes to this, but I do often think about the fact, and I wonder why. I've said this before, I was literally felt like I came out the womb with a fucking chip on my shoulder, right? Like from the youngest age, I was, and you know, I was an emo kid, right? Like when I was a teenager, emo, like the first time I reckon I was probably 10, 11 years old, I heard We're All to Blame by Sum 41. Okay, you might know that song, you might not. That's the first song I ever heard with someone like yelling or screaming. And when I heard that, it was just like, yeah, like I feel that, like that connects to me because I feel like I came out the womb pissed off, right? Because I knew that something was like, this world is fucked, right? Like I just knew, like I felt it, that this is not the way that it's meant to be. But like, what is that? What is that feeling? And it makes me wonder, like, I don't know. I wonder so many things, but like, do other people feel that way? It's like this new generation of people, like, is our purpose to like bring awareness to this, to try and stop this? I don't know. But all I know is that I've been pissed off for a while.
So looking real quickly at, again, the image from Dylan Monroe, look at the very top here, cult of Baal. What is the entire world set upon? Baal worship and human sacrifice. And from these two energies, Baal worship and human sacrifice, we get the Canaanites, the Pharaohs, the kings of Babylon. That's the beginning. Okay, and so we're gonna go back to that origin here in a minute. But the entire world, what needs to be understood here, in my opinion, and the opinion of all these people that I've mentioned before in this other slide here, these are the groups that rule the world. And they come out of these human sacrificing, Baal worshipping groups, which are direct descendants of the Nephilim, the Watchers, the fallen angels, the group that genetically modified us. Through blood communion with Lucifer, hell-bent societies learned and honed mind-destroying techniques to disempower humanity. History, science, medicine, religion, and therefore the human race were twisted to the will and destiny of Lucifer and his devotees. And then I take a quote here from The Hidden History of the Incredibly Evil Khazarian Mafia, the essay I'm going to read at the end. The Khazarian Mafia used their vast fortune to enter into a new system of banking based on secret Babylonian black magic, money magic, that they claimed to have learned from the evil spirits of Baal in return for their many child sacrifices to him. So how was the world taken over? These groups formed a relationship, cultivated, fostered a relationship with evil, with pure evil. And that evil taught them, this is how you manipulate humankind. This is how you manipulate the money systems. This is how you manipulate religious systems. This is how you manipulate medical systems. You take these societies that rule humanity, put them in authority, and then whatever those authorities say is what all of society follows. So if those authorities are corrupted, which they are, then all of society becomes corrupted, because the only medicine, history, science, religion that all of society knows is the ones that have been given to them, handed down to them by the leadership.
It makes sense, right? It makes sense. We are products, like this is what we are products of. And when you look at the amount of mental health problems and just other issues throughout society, it's like, well, obviously, look at the tree that the fruit grew from. The tree is rotten. The tree is corrupted. So would you expect a nice, healthy, clean, shiny apple to grow? Or would you expect bruised, deformed, rotten fruit to grow from that tree? Now, I'm not saying we're all rotten. I think we've all got a lot of good in us, but I think, again, we all have that feeling that something about us is wrong. Sorry. Something about us is wrong. And I don't mean that on like a personal level, but on a collective level. It it's logical. It's logical that we are not the way that we are because it's our fault. This is what we are the product of. Base notes, you little freak. Base, thank you for becoming a member. I appreciate you. And Two Wrongs says, I have paperwork form. Hospital stole my baby. Chris Nab case is fake news on my case. Said baby's dead. Twins are big hide, live same person. All right, sir. Good luck with that. Thank you. Adam Dev Media says, I think we got to watch channel 0 S3 in Discord. All right, Adam, thank you very much. Let's keep rolling with this.
And look at history. Look at history. Look at what's in the center of this artwork. The Vatican. The Vatican. Rome never fell. See there on the left? It never fell. It combined with Judea to form the Roman Catholic Church. This is a power institution. And then out of that became the rulers of the world. Look, the Khazars, the Khazarian Mafia, the Knights Templar. These are the rulers of the world. The Masons, the Jesuits. Then Switzerland in 1291, that marks the beginning of the financial takeover of the world. Black nobility. The nobility that you don't know and that you've never heard about. That's when they took over the world, right here, 1291. This is self-organizing. What you see is evil self-organizing. The earth, nature, is a self-organizing institution, so to speak. So whatever energy is put into power, that energy will self-organize because nature doesn't have an opinion. It just simply foments what is being instigated, what is being encouraged, and it will simply follow that pattern because everything is frequency. And so these groups have simply developed a current, a pattern that all of the world has followed. And so all of the world is blinded by this pattern, is blinded by this resonant frequency, this evil that they have instigated. The intermediaries, Cain, Ham, Esau, the Amalekites, the Canaanites, the Babylonian kings, Byzantine rulers, Roman emperors, the Phoenicians, the Khazars, the Pope, the Black Pope, the Illuminati, Black Nobility, and the Order of the Black Snake. These are the people and societies who have held a continuing relationship with true evil since the Younger Dryas. If you don't know what the Younger Dryas is, I'm going to tell you here in a minute. But this slide is pointing back to this group. Here, look. See these groups above? You see, and this hidden nobility is what has been steering us. Those are the groups that I just listed them right there. And they have been the intermediaries for the world as we know it today. And this all began at the Younger Dryas. What is the Younger Dryas? The Younger Dryas was a massive cataclysm. The Younger Dryas cataclysm was a 3 mile wide white-hot meteor that struck the 7-mile thick Greenland ice sheet 13,000 years ago. It blew out a 19-mile wide crater that launched building-sized ice blocks into 8-minute flight trajectories. A 1,000-foot ripple wall of meltwater, ice chunks, trees, and rubble crushed and covered all of North America and Europe with 300 to 600 feet of Earth. In my opinion, this was an attack. Here's the debris field. Here's the coverage field. Here's the crater on the left, you can see. And basically what you see in that field, the Younger Dryas debris field, this shows all of the world that was affected, that was covered over in massive amounts of Earth, and then also flooded because we had so much meltwater that formed from the cataclysm. It actually changed the atmosphere of the Earth. The Earth's atmosphere changed. If we
Whole lot of talk about Greenland right now as well, right? Isn't that kind of interesting? A lot of talk about Greenland. Very, very sought after place right now. Don't know if it's connected. Could be coincidence, of course, as they all are. But very interesting. Someone said, can you please put the link to the video you're watching on the screen? It's the right thing to do. I actually went one better and I put it in the description so you can just click it rather than having to copy it letter for letter off the screen.
Look at this map here. What we see is the Earth as it is now, so meters below sea level. So water level is normal in this photo. This is from the NASA website. And then what we see is when the before the flood came, before the Younger Dryas, the Earth probably looked a lot more like this. Now look, the brown part is land, and you can see how the landmass right up there in Alaska and Siberia, look how it's connected. You see how look at England. The UK is basically no longer an island. You see this changed everything. And then everything you see in the west there, look at the debris field. Everything in the west and all of North America, Mexico, all the way to South America was covered up in Earth. You've seen pictures of a buried planet that most likely was from that time, from the Younger Dryas, because it buried the Earth in so much land. It buried all the land in so much mass. And then the flooding, the Earth was flooded. And so you had a complete transformation that happened at the Younger Dryas. And what this did, if we look at the timeline here that I've made, what the Younger Dryas did is it mixed up all the history so that it became very difficult to know what happened before the flood, because the flood, the Younger Dryas cataclysm, wiped out all that history and quote unquote muddied it up, because it covered the earth with hundreds of feet of mud. And this mud flood, we know for a fact, happened around 11,800 or so BC, right around there. It happened. We know it happened. And we know that it covered up human habitats and fortresses and so forth, because they're buried and we're uncovering them. You can see, I mean, the pyramids at Giza are not the only pyramids on the planet. There are pyramids everywhere on this planet. They are all over the place. And what this is pointing towards is a great cataclysm that stopped a development that was happening with humanity on this planet. You see that it was infiltrated. A terrible event happened, wiped out that culture, and then we were genetically manipulated. I came across a great slide from Cliff High that shows this. And if you look here at this slide, it shows it's a timeline that's following the vibrations of the galactic center. And as we go in and out of the plane of the galactic center, we increase and decrease our vibration as the planet goes up and down through the galactic plane. Cliff isn't a Flat Earth subscriber. Now, since the writing on this is really small and hard to read, I'll just summarize the key points of what it says. 43,000 BC, pyramid civilizations founded. 11,500 BC, invasion of Earth by the Elohim, which was the Younger Dryas cataclysm, according to this chart. Antarctica was frozen, the Sahara and Gobi deserts were created, global coastal island civilizations flooded. 4,791 BC, Elohim capture Yemeni tribes. 2,700 BC, Elohim capture Mesoamericans and establish human colonies from Central North America through all of South America. 2004 BC, Babylon founded based on money magic schemes taught by the Elohim, and AD 100, Khazarian Mafia empire formally begins. What the evidence is showing us and what we're pulling out of the ground is showing us is that actually we go far beyond the 10,000 BC startup of pre-ancient Egypt. Now, around 10,000 BC, to follow this real quickly, around 10,000 BC is the development of agriculture. What I found when I was doing all of this research was that there was great disagreement among PhDs as to when the West began to develop, as to how and what the West came out of. But really, this is the beginning of human beings after the cataclysm, after the flood, when all of human beings were wiped out. And then we were genetically manipulated, taught agriculture, witchcraft, and all these things from the Watchers. And then from that, we then begin to develop the dominator cultures that come out of Sumer. This is why the West was dominator-oriented, was because it was already infiltrated by the Nephilim. And this is where I'm going to get great disagreement from a lot of folks. But when after Cain killed Abel, supposedly in the mythos of Eden, he went to a city called Nod that was fully, I mean, it was running. It was an entire society of people. And supposedly Adam and Eve and their kids, Cain and Abel and Seth, this was the beginning of all human beings. And so there's a huge problem in the biblical accounting in that, where did all these people in Nod come from? But yet that fits really nicely into the mythos of that human beings were already thriving long before the flood. And there were definitely groups of people, cities of people, organizations of people that outside of this Noah and Adam and Eve mythos. And you begin to see the tie-in between these two non-cohesive ideas of human origin. And the Great Flood is the reason why there's that disagreement, passionate disagreement with people in the 6,000 BC beginnings of human beings and the 250,000 BC beginnings of human beings. And these two groups are as non-interchangeable as the flat earthers and spherical earthers. You're not going to get either of these groups to give in to the other. And so we're simply going to have to wait and find out what the truth is as it comes out over the next few years. And so if we look at the blood...
And by the way, this, I mentioned it at the start, this documentary that he made came out about 2.5 years ago at this point, 2.5 years ago.
Line here of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, their kids, their sons. There's great discrepancy as to the order of birth of those kids, even among PhDs. I heard strong arguments that Japheth was second. I heard strong arguments that Ham was second. I even heard arguments that Japheth was first and Shem was second. So there's all kinds of discrepancy, and the reason for that is, again, the flood. The flood marked up and marred up all this history. So we see there's two Lamechs, there's two Nemahs, there's two Enochs. Enoch obviously wrote the book of Enoch, and Enoch talks about the Watchers. We see Noah is born in 2600 BC, Abraham in 2000 BC, Esau, Eliphaz are all in the 1800s. This is the development of the Levant. And to give you an idea where on the map the Levant is, it is here, right north of Egypt, just south of Turkey, modern day. Ancient Egypt and modern, or ancient Anatolia and Mesopotamia, this is where the Levant was. If we look at this little map here showing Khazaria, we see the Levant right there at the Mediterranean Sea, and we see the Khazaria developing between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea.
Again, right on the border of Russia-Ukraine, where a lot of this war is being fought, is where Khazaria was.
We know genetically, we have DNA that shows the Canaanites, the Canaanite bloodlines live on in modern Arabs and Jews. And the ones that had the most Canaanite blood was up here in Khazaria. The Canaanites moved out of the Levant area and slowly migrated, the evil ones slowly migrated up north of the Caucasus Mountains between the Black Sea and Caspian Sea and joined into the Khazarians. That's where the ancient bloodline is. Now, looking at the family lineage, and what we find is the bloodline of Ham was sort of the dark bloodline of Noah. Ham is basically the grandfather of the Canaanites. And then we also see, which is really interesting, within Shem's bloodline, Jacob and Esau. As you know, Jacob was secondborn and Esau was firstborn. Esau was a hairy, red-colored individual. And these two, Esau and Jacob, were fighting interminably inside the womb. And when they came out, Esau was first, and hanging onto his heel was Jacob. Must have been quite a birth, incredibly painful. And what we see eventually is that deception, because eventually Jacob deceived his father so that he could get the inheritance that was owed to Esau. And this great deception is what formed the rift between the Canaanites and the Israelites. And we see off of the bloodline of Esau, we have Eliphaz. Eliphaz had sexual relations with Timnah, who was a concubine, which gave birth to Amalek. We know for a fact that the Khazarian Mafia bloodlines go back to the Amalekites because many of the people who testified that were involved in CP and satanic ritual abuse claim that their abusers said that they were from the bloodline of Amalek and the Amalekites, which ties them directly into the Canaanites, which ties them into the Khazarian Mafia. Now, something that everyone needs to understand very clearly. The Khazarian Mafia is a group of bloodlines. It is not a singular bloodline. There are a few very powerful bloodlines within this group, but the vast majority of the Khazarian Mafia are people who have grouped together with the same usurpative ideas of human existence.
AKA a mafia. And if you thought he was cooking up until this point, I mean, this is where he actually gets into the juicy stuff. And if we do end up watching part 2 and 3, it goes even deeper. But this is where you really start to learn about the Khazarian Mafia.
These same ideas of rulership over all humanity, and these same ideas of we are going to be and remain in power, and everyone else is simply the cattle that we feed off of and control. Okay, that group is called the Khazarian Mafia, and it all comes out of this genealogy from Noah and from Ham and from the ancient bloodlines of the Nephilim, the fallen angels. The story of that is you had these watchers, these multidimensional beings that quote-unquote fell or came to Earth. They then manipulated genetically the human race. They changed our coding, dumbed us down and so forth. I talked about all of it already. They came here and did all that. And they eventually left. They eventually didn't stay and left this technology, this human rulership technology, in the hands of the Nephilim, these giant human beings that came out of their copulating with women. And that became the script that the Khazarian Mafia would follow. And through their convening, their continuing convening with the devil, with Lucifer, Baal, Molech, their continuing convening with that higher force, they then use that evil force to rule and take over the planet. Now, the Khazarian Mafia is not composed of a single bloodline, but a family of bloodlines that trace back to the Canaanites. The Canaanites come out of the bloodline of Esau. Esau fathered the chiefs of Edom, who became the Canaanites, eternal haters of the Israelites, who were the bloodline of Jacob, the deceiver. The Canaanites, like any mafia, were a society of people from many families, not one family alone. There certainly is royalty and hierarchy within the society, but they all bow to the same evil god. This is reiterating what I talked about just a moment ago with the Canaanites, and the Canaanites carrying the bloodline of the Khazarian Mafia, the bloodline of the Nephilim, which is the bloodline of the Watchers. Noah's first son was Shem, and he claimed to be the father of all Semites. Japheth was Noah's second son, and was the grandfather of Ashkenaz. Ashkenaz's son was Khazar, a patriarch of the Khazarian kingdom. Ham was Noah's last son. Ham means hot, warm, or sunburnt. I think that points to red skin and Esau. I think that's the same genetic. I think that genetic that comes out of Ham and that genetic that comes out of Shem was found in this red bloodline. And that formed Edom, which then moved up and became the Khazarian nation on our map. Ham had 4 sons, Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Mizraim is the grandfather of the Philistines, and Canaan the grandfather of the Canaanites. Esau, the son of Isaac, who was the son of Abraham, was the founder of Edom, which means red, and the Edomites, who were long haters of the Hebrews, Jacob's lineage. It was from this group, the Edomites, that begat Herod the Great, the same Roman Jewish Herod that tried to kill infant Jesus and whose son lopped off the head of John the Baptist. Here you can see that right in the Roman Empire, here we can see it. We can see the Khazarian Mafia at work. Canaan, the grandson of Noah, settled in the Levant and founded the Canaanites. Canaan's grandson was Nimrod, the king of Babel. He built the Tower of Babel and the city of Nineveh. The line of Ham eventually became the Philistines in 1170 BC, the greatest enemy of the lineage of Jacob, harkening all the way back to the stolen birthright of Isaac, something that I want to mention here. Isn't it interesting that the nation of Israel was born out of deception? Because Jacob didn't deserve the birthright of Esau. He got it because he deceived. He deceived his father and he deceived his brother. That anger and hatred in Esau passed down into his sons, grandsons, great-grandsons, Amalek being one of them. And they carried that hatred because the land, the inheritance, was to be theirs. It had been stolen by their father's brother, you see. And that, even though the Bible says they made up, trust me, that lost inheritance, that lost power, the lost land, that everything that was lost because of that deception fed the anger and hatred that fueled the Canaanites. It all goes back to that deception. And I just find it very interesting that all the nation of Israel, supposedly the nation after God's heart, was born of deception, is a nation that's there because of a huge deceit that took place in its history.
Over land. And look at where we are today. By the way, this is the part where we absolutely get banned 100%. A.O. Marius, celebrating 8 months, says Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you very much, Marius. Very good as well, by the way. I like that one. By the way, if you want to celebrate Valentine's Day, there is 20% off the Polarity merch store. Link below. Use the code PolarityLove and spoil your little freak or your little weirdo. That'll be up for about another 12 or 24 hours, I think.
The Amalekite nation is from the bloodline of Esau. Esau's son Eliphaz, ancestor of the Edomites, and his concubine Timnah were the parents of Amalek. Amalek founded the Amalekites, drinkers of blood. Timnah was a Horite, a Canaanite, and sex mistress, and so made Amalek an illegitimate child by Hebrew tradition. The Amalekites were Canaanites, and they were descendants of Ham. Amalek carried great disdain and hatred for the descendants of Jacob, the Israelites, because Jacob deceived his great-grandfather Isaac and stole the birthright that would have been his grandfather's, Esau. This was the hatred that forged the Amalekite nation and drove them against the bloodline of Jacob, the Israelites. The Amalekites were renowned sorcerers and used witchcraft and blood sacrifice to drive their sick way of life. They were known to shapeshift and take forms of animals to escape capture.
Not the shapeshift, not the biblical reference of shapeshifting, which still I think is happening in our modern day. I don't know if it's reptilians. I think that might be a little decoy to make it sound silly and funny, but I think there is something. I think there is 100% something to it. Don't know what it is, but skinwalkers, Wendigo, yeah, I don't know, but I think it's real. I don't know how, but I think it's real.
This notion may have come out of their vast knowledge of the plant kingdom and how to use hallucinogenic plant substances to fool an enemy. This is interesting in that information came out of a scholar of the Amalekites. And what's really interesting is it ties directly into this whole idea of nature and hallucinogenic plant substances being used against people. We know that Esau was a man of the field and a cultivator of the land. And within the kingdom of the kingdom of phyla, of plants, there are hallucinogenic properties, there are hallucinogenic chemicals. And this group supposedly became a master of understanding how to use hallucinogenic plant medicines to manipulate and harm people. So just like sugar can be made to make something taste very sweet, well, sugar is also a highly addictive drug. You see, same thing with caffeine. It can give you all kinds of energy, but it's also highly addictive. And so in the same way, hallucinogenic plants can be really helpful to a person's psychology in breaking through old thoughts that are hard to get out of your mind and assumptions, right? they're very good at that. But then they can also be used in an adulterous way. They could be used to harm someone greatly. And it's thought that the Amalekites really fostered this. They really worked on and developed an understanding of how to use plants to manipulate other people, and so to get their will. And so what I heard was this incredible story, moving into Khazaria now. The Amalekites moved up from the Levant, they're next to the Mediterranean Sea, up north into Khazaria. And so there is, within this nation of people, this real strong understanding of plant herbs and how to use them to your advantage. And this then was carried out in a story that Cliff High described, which actually got me going on this essay originally. And the reason why it did was because it tied directly to another story that was the same story that I found in a book that's unrelated to Cliff, this book here, Cannibalism, Blood Drinking, and High Adept Satanism. Kurth told a story in his book that he wrote quite a while ago that matched the exact behavior of the Khazarians that Cliff High described in his story. And I knew there was no way that these stories were unrelated because they were so sick. They were so disgusting and morbid that I knew there's no way that could have been brought up by these two different societies to be the exact same way that they operate.
And here we are today. Welcome to 2026. You've got another version of the same story.
So it opened a door for me. It opened a door for me as far as understanding the Khazarian Mafia by hearing the story, because it not only told me how terrible, how horrible they are, but their actual actions, which match to the human trafficking stories I've been getting out of the tunnels that are being captured right now in our modern society today.
By the way, I just want to say, I touched on at the very beginning of this that I think this is directly connected to disclosure. I think this is why disclosure is so complicated. I think this is why people say the truth is too terrible to be told. I think this is why ex-presidents we've been told that they wept when they learned the truth. I think this is all connected, right? And I think Michael Herrera's instincts of what he saw in Sumatra were correct. Because it makes sense. It makes sense. Why else would a government apparently show no interest in learning about anti-gravity technology, learning about a higher intelligence interacting with us? All of a sudden we get this heavily funded, high-level production thing pop onto the scene telling us, no, that's not human trafficking you saw. It's psionics. We scooped up a bunch of psionics from the tidal wave or whatever it was in Sumatra, humanitarian disaster. We just scooped up a bunch of psionics and brought them over. They're living a good life. They're happy. Don't worry about them. Don't know. I think your instincts were probably right, given what we now know.
And so it all just brought it together for me. But I'll tell you, the story is that Kurth, from this book, Kurth described in his youth, he was in the CP world. He had been thrust into that world through his uncle, who was tied to a high-ranking official in the Khazarian Mafia. And Kurth was just a young boy, 5 or 6 years old, and was being raised by Christian parents who were totally unaware of this other world society that their son was being manipulated and used in right under their watch. They were completely aware because this group so early captures the mind of their abused. So Kurth, as a child, never communicated to his parents that he was being used in ritual abuse settings for Satanism. And so he grew up in this incredibly bipolar world where on one side he's going to church and he's being taught in the ways of Western religion, and then literally during the week and at other weekends, whatever, when his parents aren't around, his uncle is taking him to these child sacrifice rituals and these insanely disgusting rituals that these people take part in. Okay, so there were two stories that struck me. Okay, so just make sure there are no kids around. He, as a child, was put into the CP world as an infant. He was taken as an infant before he even spoke. I mean, this is when he was literally an infant, just a few months old. Kurth was taken into these ritualistic settings and abused. And During that time, I'm really sorry to tell this story. During that time, photographs were taken of these situations. So the photographs that were taken, this is old school. This is back in the 70s and 60s when there wasn't any digital photography. So this is hard film that this stuff is on.
Blackmail.
And so these sick people would have collections, photographs of children who were in the midst of being raped and tortured and murdered by these people. Kurth, was in one of the pictures that was highly sought after by these collectors of CP. And so in one of the occasions, he was taken by his uncle with this high-ranking official in the Khazarian Mafia to the home of a couple that were collectors of CP. They wanted him because they wanted him to autograph, they wanted Kurth to autograph a photo of when he was in some type of ritual, and there was a black demon form shadow that was coming out from the wall with its hands open to receive Kurth, and a photograph was taken at that moment. And these sick people wanted Kurth to autograph the photo so that the photo would then become more valuable and they would be able to sell it for a higher price. This is the world. Okay. While he was there, this is unbelievable. While Kurth was there at their house, this couple described to him as a child what they did for food. And in the midst of this meal that they were eating, and this was a sick couple, they described how they would find people down by the beach. This was in Southern California. They would find homeless families down at the beach. And they would tell them, hey, we've got a nice home in the hills. We care about you. We really want to help you. We know that you're really destitute. We're going to help you find a job. And we've been watching you guys for a while now, and we think you would be perfect. And so we'd love to take you to our house. We'll give you a meal, and we'll feed your kids, and we're going to get you a job. We're going to get you guys back on your feet. Okay. So this sick couple, this Khazarian couple, would then get this family to hop in the van, and they would take them up to the hills where they lived in Southern California. And when they got them to the house, they then would act like they're going to be all friendly and all this stuff. And then they would capture them one at a time and take them into a room and tie them to the wall. And it would be a father, a mother, and then however many kids they have. And please, no kids should be around, okay? This is unbelievable. They would torture the father in front of the mom and the kids, and then they would kill him. And then they would torture the mother in front of the kids while the dad's dead. And they then would begin to peel their skin off and begin to eat the meat raw in front of the kids.
So fucked. So fucked up.
And then they would torture the kids and eat the kids. And the meat that they had at the meal they were eating there with Kurth was meat they had frozen from their harvesting. And the reason they did that was because it made the meat sweeter. It made the meat taste better. It was full of adrenaline. It was a drug. They would drain the blood from the kids and drink that blood.
Like at this point, I feel like one of the most long-standing conspiracies that has always been like, that's at the end of the scale of like fully schizo, is adrenochrome. But at this point, it makes complete total sense that adrenochrome is real. And that's why there is torture, because that is what elicits the adrenaline in the blood. So then when they consume it, they get the effects of it. Which also I saw a clip of someone speaking recently about, I think it might have been an old Mel Gibson clip. And he was basically saying it's like an unspoken thing that in Hollywood, like there is like, I don't know if he specifically said children, but he said blood is a currency. Blood is a currency in Hollywood. And sort of once you get to a certain level and you're sort of inducted into that level, beyond the veil, for lack of a better, behind the curtains, probably a better word, that it's just a known thing that there, it's blood is money. And these people, it's like a fountain of youth. Probably why Kris Jenner is aging backwards. I don't know. Seems like a bit more than a facelift.
And this story completely matched, almost word for word, the story that Cliff High then told months later as I was researching this stuff. And this gets us to 100 AD and how the Khazarian nation grew. The way the Khazarian nation became the powerhouse that it became in history was because they took over the trade routes that came out of China. If you look at this map here, this is from 100 AD.
This is it. This is how.
AD. This is about when it started. You have the Eastern Han Dynasty, and you have the Kush Empire and these empires in India that are spiced, and then you have the Chinese who are developing all kinds of silks and fabrics. And so you have caravans of families that will make all these spices and fabrics and so forth, and they'll load all their goods that they've been making for a few years onto their carts. And then they would begin this long journey from China all the way to Western Europe. Yes, all the way to Spain and the UK, or what became the UK, these Western empires just north of the Mediterranean. And to get there, though, look how you would have to travel directly over the Caspian and Black Sea.
Let's get some love in the chat, guys. Come on. Positive vibes to round us out.
As these families were traveling from China and India and passing through this area of Khazaria, the Khazarian people, like a family, would find a traveling group and say, hey, we know you guys are really tired. You've been traveling for thousands of miles. We live here in this area, and we're happy to put you up for just a few dollars. We'll set you up. We'll get you a nice meal tonight, a good place to bed to sleep in. You'll feel a lot better in a couple days, and you can be on your way. And we're happy to do this. It's just part of our helping and being neighborly, okay? So the group, the family would believe them, and they would follow them to their place, and that night they would make them a big meal. The Khazarians would make them a big meal, and they'd get them nice and full, and they would get them drunk, and they would lace their food with plant hallucinogens because they had learned that technology, right? And so they would get these people in a mind state whereby they would tell their whole life story. They would tell where they're from. They would tell all the merchants that they deal with in China, all the family and everything about them, all the names, ages, and all that good stuff. And then after a night or two, they then would tie up all the family. And then the Khazarians would then torture them in front of the kids. They would first torture the father, and then they would torture the mother, and then they would torture the kids and kill them. And what they would do is they would carry out this same technology we now see happening of what they do to children to draw adrenaline out of them and to draw hallucinogenic properties out of their blood. And that's by convincing the child or convincing the victim that they're going to die. So the initial part of the ritual, a part of the torture, is just simply physical attack. You just are physically doing torturous proceedings to the body so that the person is filled with adrenaline. And then after that, you then convince, as the abuser, you then convince that victim that they're going to die. And so they no longer are in this mindset of being focused on the adrenal portion. They're now moving into this depressive portion, which is they're believing and knowing that they're about to die. And this releases a whole different set of chemicals into the blood. So you have not only the adrenaline flowing through the blood, but you also have these other hallucinogenic properties of chemicals flowing through the blood. So that when the victim then, their blood is drained and drank, you get both the adrenaline effect as well as the hallucinogenic effect. And this is all technology. This is all human torturing and manipulating technology that has been passed down by these sick groups.
People in the chat saying DMT is what he's referring to there. It's interesting. I mean, people do say that we have DMT in our bodies and that when we die, it is released, and only then is it released. It would make sense. I mean, that's essentially what he's saying, right? Is that when people believe that they think they're about to die, that the body does release a hallucinogen. So these people are taking DMT combined with adrenalized blood, if that is correct.
And I heard this story from, and then after they had killed the family and drank their blood and ate their meat and all of that, they would take all their goods, and then they would travel to where they had described that they were going. So the Khazarians would then take all this information they had got from them after they had gotten them drunk and filled with hallucinogenic medicines. They take that information, they take all their goods, and they would sell them to posing as that family, posing with the names and everything of that family. So the folks in the West thought it was the same folks they had been communicating all this time that were in China.
Vlad the Impaler, also known as Nosferatu, would eat his enemies. Yeah, and isn't that the guy who's like literally related to the royal family? Like that's an actual thing. So guys, that's really important to listen to what Chuck just said there, is that these people, as people were coming up from China heading towards Europe for trade, they had to go through Khazaria. And the way that this mafia gained wealth and power is because Khazaria was like the central junction for these trade routes. So as people would come through, they would be invited in, appearing like they're friendly, feeding travelers with hallucinogens and then taking advantage of them, tying them up, torturing and eating them, whatever. That's a side thing. But they would take their identities. They would work out where they're going, what they're selling, who they're selling it to, and they would take their goods, go and meet up with who they were meant to be meeting, and pose as these people. This is almost a crude version of shapeshifting, right? Now, I'm not saying that these people like went on to become actual what we think as shapeshifters, but like that's what they're doing. They're stealing identities. They're posing as people and taking their wealth. And this is how the Khazarian Empire grew. By removing people, stealing their goods, and the people that they're selling to are none the wiser. Because, I mean, back then, these people don't know faces, right? You're coming from China to Europe. Like this is, it's not a thing. It's not a thing.
And so this is how they would put on disguises. The Khazarian Mafia became very adept at putting on disguises and taking on a different role and a new name. And by doing that, you could then coerce even more people by posing that you're this helpful, caring individual, but really you're this sadistic murderer. And folks have no idea that you're the serial killer because you're so adept at putting on all these different costumes. And what do we see here in Dylan Monroe's map that he gave? Costumes. These groups have just simply been wearing costumes just like the ancient Khazarians did in Khazaria. They simply put on a costume of these, in this case, this helpful group that would help this family. And nowadays you have a government that poses as this helpful government, or a medical institution that poses as this helpful institution, or this religious group that poses as this helpful institution. And on the outside, and the mirage is that they're this helpful, human-oriented, compassionate, love-centered group that is there to totally help society, and we are the ones, or the caregivers, and we're going to help everybody. But behind that curtain is this sadistic murderer. And that's what we see in our governments now. That's what we see in the medical systems. Look at the medicine they use to treat people. They poison people to quote-unquote heal them. And it's the same thing with religion. They get people to believe certain characteristics about themselves, which poisons them. And then they offer them the only solution, which is the religious belief system. And it's the same with medicine. You pose this disease that they're going to get, and then you pose the only solution, which is this particular elixir that you inject. And it's the same thing with government. They pose as this helpful group, and after we have this war, you're going to have this peaceful society. It's going to be awesome because we're like this helpful society. When really all the government is doing is instigating war, as much as the medical institution is instigating disease, and as much as the spiritual institutions, the religious institutions, are instigating a degraded view of oneself, a compromised view of one's creative force, you see? And it's the same pattern of deception as what was going on with Esau and Jacob, as what was going on with the Khazarians and these people that traveled through, and as what was going on with Kurth Barker and his involvement with CP and the Luciferians that were talking to him. All these people are doing the same thing, posing as kind, humanitarian people, but they're vicious murderers. They're the exact antithesis of what they claim to be. And this is how you know this is the situation now that we've been in for over 10,000 years, is because it's the same patterns. It's the same patterns of harm. It's the same patterns of destruction that have been permeating our society since the very beginning. And this technology is what they used to harness all the money, harness all the power. And you're about to hear that story with this accounting that these two scholars have done for us. They have written the story. The gentlemen are, I mentioned them earlier, Preston James and Mike Harris, who wrote this essay called The Hidden History of the Incredibly Evil Khazarian Mafia. And it basically is going to walk you through 100 AD to modern time, and is going to show exactly how they not only infiltrated the West, but they infiltrated all of the ruling families. They infiltrated all of the money. They infiltrated all of the religions. They infiltrated all of the medicine. I mean, heck, even in 1913, you have Rockefeller establish the American Cancer Society to shut down naturopathy. One of the first prerogatives, desires, and he even said it, one of the first things he wanted to do was to get rid of this quote-unquote witchcraft, which is what they wanted to do, to move people away from using plant medicines to heal people, to moving to using oil-based, pharma, petrol-based chemicals to quote-unquote heal the body, which is an adulteration, which is a blasphemy against nature. Here, Rockefeller is posing as this humanitarian, this person who wants to raise money to heal people, whereas the whole thing is a Ponzi scheme.
Around the same time that John D. Rockefeller seized U.S. media, he also hijacked U.S. medicine. When it was discovered that drugs could be produced from petroleum, America's top oil mogul ordered his army of propagandists to invert reality accordingly. Medicines used for thousands of years were suddenly classified as alternative, while the new, petroleum-based, highly addictive, and patentable drugs were declared the gold standard. After buying a German pharmaceutical company that manufactured chemicals of war for Adolf Hitler, Rockefeller leveraged his political influence by pressing Congress to declare natural healing modalities unscientific quackery. Rockefeller then took control of the American Medical Association and began offering massive grants to top medical schools under the mandate that only his approved curriculum be taught. Any mention of the healing powers of herbs, plants, and diet was erased from most medical textbooks. Doctors and professors who objected to Rockefeller's plan were crucified by the media, removed from the AMA, and stripped of their license to teach and practice medicine. Those who dared to speak out were arrested and jailed. When evidence began to emerge that petroleum-based medicines were causing cancer, Mr. Rockefeller founded the American Cancer Society, through which he suppressed that information. John D. Rockefeller is duly credited as the founder of the pharmaceutical industry, and the reason that medical error is currently the third leading cause of death in America. This is not an indictment against doctors. More than anyone, they are under the stranglehold of the single largest lobbying power in Washington. Every year, the pharmaceutical industry spends at least twice the amount as big oil to influence laws, policies, and public perception. Thanks to Mr. Rockefeller, the architect of American monopolies, no industry has more power over our lives than Big Pharma.
There it is, guys. Chuck Swindoll Jr. The link is in the description. If you guys enjoyed that, please go and give him his chocolates. I think you guys did enjoy it, and I think that is as rough as some of the content is. I think it's because I think we watched it at the right time. It's a time when people are looking for answers about this kind of stuff, and I think it really does paint a clear picture. Now, in that documentary, first of all, guys, let's get some love in the chat, because I do want to say, as much as I hate saying the word, I don't hate saying it, but it just feels cheesy. There is a polarity to it, right? That's why the channel is called this, because there is always a polarity. And while you guys are putting up some love in the chat, I want to say that I think I saw people asking, like, what are we going to, like, how do we fix this? What are we going to do about it? I think this is coming out because this is like something is being done about it. I think something is being done about it because if you think about it, if something is ruling over us that just wants to keep us brain dead, distracted, and enslaved, and so we can be peacefully farmed, right? I mean, it seems like that is the idea that they create a system that kind of generates money and a society, and then from the top they can just take their pickings to do with us what they want, right? And we're finding out that what they want to do is actually quite insane. It would be in their best interest for absolutely none of this stuff to come out. Now, I know there's a lot of like weird shit going on in American politics right now. You know, you don't know who's telling the truth. People you trusted seem like they're maybe even part of it. I don't know. Politics is always messy, and politics is fake and gay, and we know that anyway. But at the end of the day, it's coming out. Something is happening, and I think that can only be happening because there is good in the world. There are good forces, and this, let's call it a parasitic energy, parasitic evil force, has obviously had a grip on at least Western culture for a long, long time, which would mean any kind of resistance, any kind of pushback has to have been happening in the shadows, discreetly, right? Because if the control structure, if this is where the control structure is, and this is what the control structure wants, anything that is going to be pushing back against that is in the public eye is going to be censored, shut down, removed, going to be made out that they've gone crazy. Kanye's gone crazy. Britney Spears has gone crazy. All the people who are saying the things, they've just gone crazy. Don't worry about them. Michael Jackson, he went crazy. They've all gone crazy, right? So if anyone's going to speak out about this, if anyone is going to do anything about this, I think it has to be done in secret. And I've said on the channel before as well that I really hope that the real secrecy around disclosure is obviously not just the dark side about it, but I think it's like it's dual layered, that there is this dark side and this is a part of our reality. But maybe this whole reverse engineering, this whole deep underground bases where things are going on that no one can talk about, is because it is part of a fight back against this, because we know if we try to approach this with like guns and tanks, we're coming to a gunfight with a knife. Okay, it's just like that. We need to be able to fight fire with fire, and perhaps that is what is actually going on. Is that there is something behind the scenes. People are taking the arrows from the public as being called gatekeepers, liars, hiding from us free energy, free technology, all of this shit. But really, maybe one day they're going to be called the ultimate patriots. Maybe one day when all of this comes out, which it seems like we're heading to, that these are the people that have been fighting for mankind, and this has been happening underground. I don't know. This is just a theory, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I think if there is good, there must be. If there is bad, that there must be good. And like I said, this is all coming out. It must be for a reason, and it's certainly to this control structure's detriment. Okay, it's not doing them any favors at all by having all of this stuff exposed. So, guys, with that being said, thank you all. I hope, even though it's dark, I hope you found some kind of comfort in gaining some understanding to the situation. And again, shout out to Chuck Swindoll Jr. Link is below. I'm probably the next couple of streams that we do will be a follow-on from this. So we're going to be looking at the essay that he kept referencing, which actually explains this all in more detail. Like, he kind of told us about it in that essay that we just looked at. In the follow-up one that we'll probably cover in 2 parts, he actually gives more of a timeline and explains like how this happened and what the timeline of events were to get to that point. So that will be coming up probably not tomorrow, the day after. But thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you as always. Perfectly Imperfect celebrating 6 months says, Josh, thank you for connecting the dots, creating a picture. My pleasure. All credits to Chuck. Really, I'm just helping get this information out there. And she also says, love my freaking weirdo family. Thank you very much. We love you too. And Michael Frost says, why is YouTube blocking the word adrenochrome if all of this is not real? Again, love your work, sir. Come back to Australia. I'm sure I'll be back one day. But thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate your support as well. And that's it for today, guys. Big thank you. Big love. I hope you're all doing well. Stay safe. Look after each other. Get outside. Touch some goddamn grass. And I will see you all next time. Peace.
Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to